Hello, everyone. Welcome to an action-packed episode of ARG Presents. I am Amigo Aaron, joined this week by a man whose hit points are low, his charisma is even lower, but he artificially jacks this stuff up, if you know what I'm saying. It's the Brent.
Are you saying I use drugs? Performance-enhancing drugs for this show?
I think you use magic-enhanced drugs to up your game.
I
approve.
It hasn't worked so far. What's going on?
No, it has not. So,
I need to gain some levels.
Correct. If you were with us last week, we spun the wheel, we made the deal. And this week, we'll be playing games selected from the arcade in the late 80s.
Yes.
Bro, what are your memories of the arcades in the late
80s? Fading, because I was a very young lad at that time. I do remember playing some late 80s games, but mostly my memories of arcade stuff really starts in the early 90s.
Yeah. You know, the funny thing about the late 80s is the majority of what is considered the golden age or classic video games came from the early 80s.
Yes, that's correct.
And so, and that's not to say that there were no good games in the late 80s. It's just when I looked through the list, I was like, this list is wanting compared to what it came before it. And
a little bit.
I guess that's because, I don't know, some of the creativity was poured into the beginning more than it was at the end. I'm not sure what the difference was.
Well, I think at this point in the arcade, it was all about upping the last guy. Even if your ideas weren't better, it was just about getting the better graphics, the better sound, the gimmick to draw the person in. Because you had to make that initial impact. No one knew how good your game was if you couldn't get them to drop that first quarter.
No, I think you're right. And I think there was a resurgence in the early 90s. So I think that the video game industry sort of hit a peak and then hit a small valley and then peaked again in the early 90s.
And then exploded into obscurity.
Well, let's say, listen, if you're in a ticket game, this is your golden era.
Well, no, it's not.
I'm not. So, we picked a couple games from the late 80s arcades time. Now, it's amazing how this happens because I know no one's going to buy this. Nobody.
They think we plan.
Yeah.
We fix the wheel so we get the games we want. Let me tell you, if that was true, last week wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, we don't agree on nothing.
No.
And we don't consult each other on our picks.
Absolutely not.
Until it's time for us to play the other guy's game.
Pick, yeah.
So, amazingly this week, we both picked sort of hack and slash sword games from the same company.
RPG Fantasy. We both picked RPG Fantasy. It's unbelievable.
And that company is Taito.
Yes.
So I thought before, because I don't know how much you know about the company Taito. I mean, they made lots of great games.
Oh, sure. I know they're a great publisher, a great developer. But, as for the company secrets, the ins and outs, as it were, not much.
Right. And so I thought, well, this is a good opportunity to have a look at Taito and learn something. And I thought, well, I'll just do that before we play the game, or before we talk about the game. So I looked a little bit of stuff up on Taito. Now, get this, Brent. When you think Taito, you think big-time Japanese video arcade player.
Yes.
Right? So the company was founded in 1953 by a Ukrainian businessman. What do you think of that? Ukrainian, y'all. His name was Michael Kogan, and it was founded as the Taito Trading Company. So, a lot of these different big-time video game players start as, like, for example, Coleco was a leather outfit.
Nintendo's playing cards and toys, yeah.
Taito was, right out of the gate, was in the business of vending machines. So they were not too far away.
Yeah.
Now, get this. And this is crazy. Taito started out importing and distributing vending machines, and it was the first company, I can't believe this one, it was the first company to distill and sell vodka in Japan.
Wow. Who knew?
That is I don't know where to guess in a million years. So, eventually it got into jukeboxes, as one would you would do in that
era.
Vending the
jukebox, I could see that.
Right, and they started started making their own jukeboxes and selling them. And then eventually, in the late 60s, they started making their own arcade machines, coin-operated machines. They changed their name from the Taito Trading Company to the Taito Corporation in August of 72, and they introduced their first video game in 73. So Taito was making some of those mechanical games we talked about in the 70s episode. So several of its they were sort of in cahoots with Midway for a little while, and then in '78 it all happened. It went down. Toshihiro Nishikado designed and created Space Invaders.
Yes.
This was the company's most popular title and one of the biggest games in the whole history of arcades.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first time you played a proper Space Invaders?
I really don't, because again, I would have been way, way, way too young for that kind of memory. But I know, looking back on it now, I hate Space Invaders.
I actually own a Space Invaders cocktail, and most of it. And
yeah. I remember. I was there.
When I first saw Space Invaders, though, I think it was at a local department store, our Hex, where we saw a lot of the games for the first time. And it really was quite an astounding piece of kit. Now, the one I saw wasn't the awesome one with the awesome side art of the thing throwing a missile down.
Right.
This was just the more black, sort of generic. But it was a cool game. It had cool sounds. You could hear it everywhere.
Yes.
And man, it was a huge, massive hit everywhere. So, Taito also had a presence in the U.S. They had in '73 they had opened Taito America division, and so America's purpose was basically to handle licensing of their Taito games to American, American publishers.
Standard how we normally get first-time companies over here.
Yeah, and it was initially it was in of all places Elk Grove Village, Illinois, and they eventually moved it. But I think that's kind of cool. I like when these companies they have a presence in the U.S. One thing I've noticed about these Japanese companies as I look through their history is that there's a lot of wacky, and maybe all companies are like this, there's a lot of wacky dividing of the company, or the company owns smaller companies, and they kind of suck those back in.
Sure.
They're wrangling. Atari did the same thing, and Taito did that. They had several different companies that they put out that would handle someone would handle the vending game business, someone handled the jukebox business, someone handled the arcade stuff. They had also, like I said, they had offices all over the world, which I think was kind of neat. So in August of '88, the corporation had its 35th anniversary. They changed the logo to the sort of the current day one, which you have seen in the time when these games were out.
Sure.
This is when they were going with. Before they had sort of these games would have had probably the point, but this is right around the time they would have switched. Actually, yours may not have. Yours may have had the other. I think yours actually did have the new logo in it. So they were actually they had a Taito software outfit that was in Bothell, Washington, that was in charge of doing like software. They did some software, did some conversions and stuff.
They did a lot of conversions.
Well, some of the stuff other corporations, they shilled out to other people. In '91, they shut the software company down. And in '96 they shut down Taito America after 20 years of running the show. So let's talk about some of their games. And I'm going to run through these. You tell me how many of these you've heard of. And some of these we actually have covered. I think that's kind of funny. Of course, you had Space Invaders in '78.
Right.
You had Speed Race in '74. You had Gunfight.
Yep.
I know that one.
Yep.
Kicks, which is a very unique game. I always like that when you have a line, you have to make squares on the screen without getting hit by this weird thing. Of course, Jungle Hunt. God, what a great game that is! I love it. Where you swing through the jungle on the vines and swim and jump the boulders and rescue the girl.
The 3-stage game, yeah.
Elevator Action. Oh man, what a game! That's another great game.
Yep.
I'm a huge fan of Elevator Action. I love that game. And that was in '83. And these are just hit after hit after hit.
They are.
Buggy Challenge, which wasn't a huge hit here, but I have played it.
It was good. It's still a fun game, yeah.
Bubble Bobble, enough said.
Huge.
That one we could actually play on this show. It's in '86. They also had Chase HQ, very popular in the UK. I can tell you right now, they love that game over there. Kickmaster in '92, Gunbuster in '92, and Puzzle Bobble in '94. They had a lot of. And they had a ton of. You could probably sit here all day, and not to mention Alcon was another one that they did, which we've talked about on the show. So I mean, they have a back catalog that's unfreaking believable.
It's huge, yeah.
They also would release, of course, they released a lot of stuff on the consoles. I thought this was interesting, so I wrote this down. Several games were released for the Famicom and Super Famicom in Japan. They teamed up with an outfit called the Disco Corporation.
All right, sure, why not?
Good name. But guess what? Taito actually made the Disco Corporation.
Oh.
And of course, eventually they took him back in. Now, here is something I really want to touch on. Because I'm telling you, I never heard of this thing.
Okay.
Get this. This is going to blow you away. In 1992, Taito announced that they were going to get into the console game. Okay?
Okay.
They had a CD-ROM-based video game console. Now, get the name of this thing is the Wow Wow. W-O-W-O-W. Wow Wow.
All right.
For the people that came up with Wii. And Wii U, you got the Wow
Wow.
The
classic, the Wii U.
Now, this thing was going to play near exact ports of Taito's games.
I think that would have been, I mean, it worked for Neo Geo.
It gets better.
Okay.
So, their console was going to stream games via satellite.
Okay, no, that's out. There's no way that would work.
Yeah, it was going to stream their games. They shown this thing off Tokyo Toy Show in '92, and it had it was
in '92. They were going to stream from a satellite in '92.
It was. Hey, listen, they were forward thinking. The thing had a CD-ROM, but also had a satellite receiver, and it would have streamed the games via a satellite uplink.
Unless it was cloudy.
And the article, there was an article published about this in France's Console Plus magazine. It would have essentially been like a miniature arcade for the living room. It would have played. It looked like a little arcade machine. For what
I mean, everything except for that satellite thing sounds awesome. And I think Taito had enough hits that they could have maybe sold some of those.
Yeah, it was going to be using some of the similar hardware that was in the arcade machines themselves. And they were going to go in with a Japanese satellite channel, and that's how they were going to do it. They were going to basically shoot this stuff off the satellite, and the receiver would be in the console.
Huh.
Now, what happened to this thing? Well,
I can make a guess.
What happened was that when they started doing the testing, and this is explained by one of the engineers, the data transferring speed was not enough. And there was a lot of the error correction packets eat up those precious data speeds. They're basically too slow. Excuse me. And the user would have to wait several minutes to download one small game. So what it was doing, it wasn't really. They were basically pulling the game down off satellite in '92.
Right. Oh no, that's super impressive, but not feasible.
Well, I mean, I think it's really slick. I mean, it's a neat idea. Now, unfortunately, guess what? It never was made.
Sure.
Unfortunately, they ended up backing out of the deal. I mean, they just didn't do it. I mean, what are you gonna do if it can't be done? You can't be done. So, what happened to Taito? You're probably asking yourself. It's funny. The timing on this was actually sort of amusing. So, Taito eventually entered the Tokyo Stock Exchange. I didn't know that. It was publicly traded.
But that didn't go well.
It did. It actually went pretty well.
Oh, really?
But it went so well that on August 22nd, 2005, Square Enix came calling. We all heard of them.
Yeah.
And they said they were going to purchase 247,000 shares of stock, and up to the tune of about almost $500 million.
Woo!
So it's not. This isn't a company like sort of floundered. You're like, oh, poor Taito, what happened? All that. No, they went to the bank, the money bank.
Yeah. And then got eaten.
And Square Enix bought them. They bought 93% of the shares, and so they pretty much own. Yeah.
I mean, that's ownership.
Yeah, and it says here by 2006, Taito was a full subsidiary, wholly owned by Square Enix. Now, what they were going to do is use Taito's properties.
Of course, yeah. Well, and let me tell you, they got rewarded for making good games.
Sure. So
good for them. I mean, I hate that they're gone. I hate that they got absorbed. But, I mean, if you're going to go, that's the way you want to go.
And then, of course, Square Enix picked up all their little subsidiaries, Taito Soft, and all these other things.
Yeah.
So get this. Here it is as we record this, the first month of 2019. On July 2018, Taito announced that it was going to return to software publishing for new video game consoles, and so they're basically effectively their name kind of lay dormant. I mean, they released plenty of these Taito Grizz hits and stuff like that, but I mean, now they're actually going to be presumably making first run new games for these consoles. Plus, they're going to be re-releasing some of their old properties too. So they are still around and in some form, and they are wholly owned by Square Enix. Now, Square Enix is famous for the aren't they the people that did Final Fantasy and all that?
They do all the
So from this fine company, we decided to pick 2 games. Like I said, we didn't know we were doing it, but we did. And so I'm going to lead the charge this week with my game. And my game I picked was Rastan.
Yes.
Now, Brent, just before I get started here, have you ever played Rastan?
I have, in the arcade.
In the arcade, yeah, of course.
Yes.
And so you played it when it was out in its heyday.
Yes, I remember playing this game in front of a Big Lots.
There you go. So, Rastan or Rastan, how do you pronounce it?
I would imagine it's Rastan.
That's what I would think too. Of course, produced by Taito in 1987. It's a single-player upright cab. Now, the funny thing about this, before we get started, just the particulars. The CPU in this thing is a 68,000, just like the Amiga had. It ran at, it says here 8 megahertz, but it was probably 7.14 megahertz. It also had a Z80, which was probably used for sound.
Everything.
No, the sound was an M8 6809, and it was a standard horizontal arcade monitor, nothing special. This is the first game I think we've covered on here, arcade-wise. It was a JAMA game.
Yep.
No.
Yeah,
we've
talked
about it is. We've talked about JAMA in the past, but just to briefly touch on it, JAMA was a connector that you could use to every arcade machine had a big connector or a series of connectors that hooked the electronics to the actual machine.
Yes.
And so what they did was they decided on a standard, and the standard they came up with was JAMA, which I believe was Japanese arcade manufacturers. Something or other adapter. I can't remember. Something like that.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
And it's just a big long adapter that shoves into the side of the board. And the good thing about it is when you are done with that game, you can swap out another game for it as long as it has the same button configuration and also has the same monitor, specs. So this was something that kicked in. I believe we started seeing these about the late 80s. I think that's where.
Yes. This is the beginning of them.
Yeah.
And they were a glorious thing. I mean, especially if you're an owner-operator in an arcade, being able to quickly switch out a board for another board that was a game changer. And really, it's something that helped Taito especially because they did a ton of conversions.
They did. They absolutely did.
Including your game and my game.
Oh, really? Yeah, I could see it. So, Rastan, when it came out, and I kind of looked on the backstory. This is a classic Conan-esque game.
Yeah, very.
This was released as Rastan or Rastan Saga in Japan. And it's funny, the game is actually has more content in the Japanese side. I'm guessing you probably haven't played the Japanese version of this.
Mm-mm.
It's got a backstory and stuff, which we'll get to that in a moment. When this game comes up, like I said, you've got a big, beefy, chunky, Conan-looking guy. I mean, he looks they make a little bones about this fact that this guy is effectively a Conan.
He is Conan, that's right.
Yeah, he's a big, beefy guy with a sword. So you don't really get much of a story in the American version. It just sort of drops you into this kind of mountainous pass, and then you just go to work, and that's pretty much it. You go killing stuff. Japanese version, though, actually gives you a little bit of background, which is helpful. And so one thing you find out immediately in the Japanese version is there's a little prologue that says, "I used to be a thief and murderer. Otherwise, I could not survive in such difficult times. Sit beside me and listen to my story of days filled with adventure. And then that's how you start the game. And then when you hit start, it says, I succeeded in obtaining consent from the Princess of Siam to exchange the dragon's head for her kingdom's treasures. I started on my quest for the dragon's lair. So if you're playing the Japanese version, you realize that your guy's going to go kill a dragon and take the head back for a big load of money.
Yep.
That's how you do it. In the American version, just go kill now. No stop. There's no story. You just go and kill. And as you go through the game, in between the missions in the Japanese version, there are little quotes, and they're usually I've got to hurry, I got to kill this guy,
right?
I can't afford to die, stuff like that. But I like that stuff. I like that's kind of.
I can't afford to die.
Well, I hate that. Who
I
can?
mean, truer words have never been spoken.
You know how expensive a funeral is? I'm going to have to work for 100 years before I can afford to die. So the in the game, it's a side scroller and with an up and down scroller at times, where you go basically left to right on some levels, most of the levels, and kill everything you see.
Yes.
I mean, there's no cuteness about it. It's nonstop. It's a nonstop parade of killing. So what are you killing? Well, you've got a whole slew of bad guys. On the first level, for example, you've got this four-armed guy that throws what looks like, I don't know what, they look almost like the juggler pins. Yeah. You've got lizard men. You've got like what they call chimeras. They're lions with the head of a dragon sewn onto them.
Well, close enough, I guess, for this.
You've also got these flying guys that can drop down on you. There's bats. It's all the stuff you would expect to find in a D&D style game. And they're always on you. You're everywhere you go, you're running around. Now your guy starts out the game with a sword, but he can actually pick up other weapons, including an axe. He can get a flail. He can also get a flaming sword. Always nice, cool looking. It shoots a little like a bolt. He can also pick up potions that help him. They give him power. That also they will provide him with a bit more health, stuff like that. So I mean, they don't want to reinvent the wheel here. Now, you're probably asking yourself, this sounds pretty pedestrian. Just go kill stuff. This game really has two big things going for it. And one is it's just fun. It's a fun game where Rastan, it's very simple. You've got an attack button and a jump button. You swing your sword, you kill stuff, you go forward. That's the game. The whole game. Now they switched to different levels. There are a ton of bosses in this that you fight. You've got 6 bosses. To get to each boss, you've got to go through 2 lands. All right. So normally there's an outside land, and then you've got like an inside in a castle type land. Now sometimes you go in and out a little bit, but for the most part, you're inside. So on those second levels. Inside the castle, on the outside, you just got to go through the woods or something like that. On the inside of the castle, you're going to have more traps. In fact, that's where the traps are. Often there's fire in there, fire pits, stuff like that. There's your classic sort of like platforming stuff. You have to move moving platforms, avoiding swinging stuff. It's well done. It's not like it's not super original, I would say. When I
agree.
But it's fun, and it's well. I mean, Taito, if they knew anything, they knew how to set up controls. They knew how to make the game interesting and fun and challenging. The second thing this game's got going for it is an awesome soundtrack.
Yes,
This has got to be one of the most memorable.
It's what it's known for, in my opinion.
The funny thing about it is, there aren't a ton of songs.
No, there's only 2.
No, there's more than 2. There's like 4, I believe. There's
2, and then
there's
2
one
remixes.
for each level. The 2 levels. Then there's the end boss song, and then there's the credit song. I know at least those songs. The opening song on this is just amazing. Yeah. One of the all-time great arcade tunes.
Yeah.
I had to look to see who exactly did the music for this. There was 2 guys, Naoto Yagashita and Masahiko Takada. Now, both these guys have extensive credits with Taito, but I noticed a couple of the standouts that they worked on. Yagashita You worked on Bust a Move, Chase XQ, Rainbow Islands, and Bubble Bobble. And Takaki worked on one of the sequels to Rastan, aside from this one. He also worked on Rainbow Islands, Bubble Bobble, Darius Plus, and Superman. So,
Superman had great sound.
I was going to say, say what you will about the game. Superman, the music was really good in it. So,
or this was a decent game with great sound. Superman was a game that sucked with great sound.
Yeah. The sound was out of this world, and so when you play this game, and no matter how well you do, you get a good chunk of it. And the songs are long and they repeat real well, so that's one of the all-time great things about this game. So as you roll through this, and it gets harder and harder, you'll end up coming to these bosses. Like I said, there are 6 bosses. Now, the bosses you get to as you finish the castle level, and this real creepy music plays as you come out to fight the boss. It's hard to explain the sound of it. It's like it's real, but it's everything in this is heavily influenced by the Conan motion picture. So
yes.
So the music in the Conan, if you've ever seen the original Conan, and whether you liked it or not, the music it's highly regarded. It's a tremendous soundtrack.
Yeah.
I like both the Conan flicks actually. I thought they were really good.
Yeah, for what they are.
For the originals. So, and you, of course, you're fighting Conan-like adversaries. So the first guy you fight is a guy. It's basically a skeleton guy with a I believe he's got a halberd. Then you fight a demonic winged sword guy. And by the way, these guys all have names in the if you look at them. A lot of the information about this game in terms of the background story and stuff comes from like the Master System version, where they actually printed up a backstory. I'll get into the other versions in a minute. The third guy you fight, Simple Gatus, which is the Wizard King. I thought the Wizard King looked pretty cool, but it's funny because having to watch I could not get past the first bad guy.
The first boss?
The first boss, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Did you get that far?
Yes, I made it past the first boss. I don't think I made it to the second boss.
No, but the
game is frustratingly hard.
It is. I played the first and second level so much that I got those down pretty good.
Yeah.
The fourth guy is Laos, the Dragon King. Then you've got the Hydra. He's pretty cool looking. And then finally you've got the Dragon. And you end up cutting if you beat him, you cut his head off. He's done, which is kind of cool. The game was popular enough to feature 2 sequels, Rastan Saga 2, and in Europe this was known as Nastar and Nastar Warrior here. So why they didn't go with, I don't have any idea why they would have changed it. And Warrior Blade, Rastan Saga 3. I've never played the third one, I'll have to say.
I don't think I have either.
I have played Rastan.
I have played the second.
I've played Nastar or Nastar Warrior, and I also played the Rastan Saga 2. And I'll tell you, I thought they were horrible.
Yeah.
The sound was again good, but the guy was real squatty and weird looking.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what they were thinking. It looks uglier than the first one. I don't. That one was a real misstep.
The first one was colorful. I mean, the backgrounds were all pretty brown and dark.
Yeah.
But the bad guys themselves were very colorful. Where that all changed.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a complete disaster, but I couldn't figure out why they would have went in that direction. And I believe that you could actually have a dual screen lineup for maybe the third Rastan. Now I think about it. I believe it actually had, the side-by-side horizontal screen.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
I think now that I think about it, I think I have played the third one, but since it wasn't the subject of this look, I didn't get into it much, but I did play a little bit. So, this game was pretty popular. It did pretty well over here, and of course it did real well in Japan. And so, you're going to get a lot of ports. And the ports of this are kind of interesting. The number one port probably for this thing was the Master System. Got a real good port. Now, which I actually have, that version. Now, get this. I thought this was interesting. Rastan was released on the Master System before the ESRB kicked in, right? Which is the rating system
over here.
It's the only known game for the Master System to feature full frontal female nudity.
Huh. There you go.
Yeah, and it's for the there are enemy monsters in this thing that are topless, and also in the manual where they tell you what the enemies are, they're topless in there too.
Sure, why not?
I like that. the only console that got a version of Rastan was the Mega Drive. They got Rastan as is in the arcade. All right, it was a pretty direct conversion. They'd messed around with a few things to make it more console-y, but I think it's kind of cool. The Master System also doesn't have the cool cutscenes in there, which is kind of a bummer. There's a Game Gear version that was only released in Japan, and I have not seen it, but I can't imagine it being too much different than the.
I think the
Master
Game Gear
System
can handle that.
Yeah,
no problem.
The C64 got a version of this in the 80s. Yeah, but it's different. This time, Rastan is defending his territory from demons. Got to do that, you know. I heard it was okay. You know, I heard it was okay. The ZX Spectrum got a port, and again for what it's doing, it's pretty good. And it had good music, but the load times are horrible. The Amstrad and the MSX2 both got ports. The Amstrad version is supposed to be horrible, double horrible, which is a shame because the Amstrad's a pretty capable machine. The MSX2 version, Taito actually did it themselves, and it's very similar to the Master System port. The IBM PC and the Apple got ports that were pretty good. And here's one I'd forgotten, and the reason I even went into these whole port things is because the Coco got a clone of this game, and I'd totally forgotten it. It was called Warrior King, and the guy's named Rastan with 2 N's in the classic Coco style. So
that makes it a totally original character.
Yeah. There was an unreleased ST version, but there's a demo for it. Kind of interesting. And then something else I thought was interesting. Taito released a game called Champion Wrestler. Now, it's funny. I just played this last week. I didn't have any idea. I played it on the TurboGrafx, and I didn't pay much attention. But sure enough, there's a guy in there called Miracle Rastan, and he's one of the wrestlers. Big, chunky, bulked up guy. Now, I didn't like Champion Wrestler that much, but I understand it is what it is. So I looked. I didn't really see any reviews per se on this, I couldn't find any information about how much money it made. It must have done pretty well because people still talk about it and people still remember it.
Well, the sound was that good.
Yeah, well, I mean, the gameplay, it can't be undersold. It's a fun game. I think the platform elements are good. It's not the easiest game, but I mean, they were making a buck. They made it hard. I looked up what the PCB there. I could not find anyone selling the full arcade machine. I did find some people selling the board. The board's selling for between $120, $150, $60. You could get a bootleg version for about $100, and the marquee's $20, and the bezel for this thing's $190. And they're selling for this selling for this too. Any thoughts about the game overall?
I was never a huge fan of Rastan, except for the music, and it is one of those tunes that is locked into my brain. That
it's in there right now.
I can hear 3 or 4 bars of it and know exactly what it is, especially the driving part of it. I'm not a huge fan of this game. I think it's overly difficult, even for an arcade game. It is full of cheap hits.
Yeah.
Full.
Yeah. I watched a guy speed run this, and it was quite amazing because he just bullied through it and almost never stopped.
Yeah.
And that may be the key. One thing I noticed when playing it is the enemies have not that many frames of animation. So if they're jumping or something, they just basically like float up or down.
Yeah, they hover.
You know, they don't actually. You don't see much animation from them. He's right. They'll get on ledges or corners and they'll just start chucking stuff or whatever, waiting for you, and you have to kind of angle your way in.
And what's really bad about the game is it is unforgiving from scene one. Right off the bat, it gives you no time to learn because the main character jumps kind of floaty, so it gives you no time to learn that and puts you right into some difficult platforming at the end of stage 1, where if you fall, you're dead. So it's overly difficult in my opinion. But the sound is so good. I highly recommend everyone go and look this game up.
I think it's a fun game. I think it's actually fun to play. That music gets you fired up when you're playing too. You want to hack the crap out of stuff. I mean, really, I know we harp about this, but I don't think I've ever heard a tune quite like it in video games.
It is so, like I said, it ingrains itself in your mind, and you could just be sitting around. Even before Aaron told me what he was picking, I could have sung this song for you.
Oh yeah,
and I hadn't heard it for probably 3 or 4 years prior.
The one thing I should mention is the backgrounds in this game. They're really good, and a lot of places.
They're detailed.
They're definitely inspired. At least one, the opening mountain scene, and I think it reappears later, is absolutely inspired by the two kings, Lord of the Rings, where you've got the 2 big statues, and there are 2 of them. They look just like the cover of the book.
Yes.
So there's no doubt that they horked those.
Yeah, this was heavily horkied.
But I mean, it gives you the feeling that you're walking through these mountain passes and stuff. I mean, I think it's pretty immersive for an arcade game, in my opinion.
Especially for the era.
Yeah.
But again, my problem with it, overly difficult. It has way too many cheap hits.
Oh, it's cheap. It'll cheap you.
But the sound is so good, it kind of makes up for it.
I think you will enjoy it if you play it. I really do. I think it's a good time. And again, the Turbo of the Master System version is good. I really enjoyed it too. It's a little more in depth. It gives you a little more play time. So I recommend it. Brent, let's move along now. It's funny. Like I said, we did not talk beforehand, but Brent picked almost a sequel to this in some way. What do you got?
I picked Cadash.
Cadash.
Cadash. That's how I pronounce it, man. This is also in the fantasy realm of a D&D Wizards and Warriors type setting. However, where Rastan was very hack and slash platform, this really adds in those role-playing elements that was completely unheard of in this era of the arcade.
Yeah.
Really groundbreaking with this. This came out in 1989 in the arcade. It did have a couple ports that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, but I want to mention. It came out for the Genesis in 92. Yep. The TurboGrafx 16 had a port in 91.
Which I played last night.
The major differences, the TurboGrafx 16 port, pretty good.
Yeah, it's really
pretty good.
Yeah.
The Genesis port, however, cuts 2 characters that you can be, which makes it completely unplayable.
That's ridiculous. That's unbelievable. Think about that for a minute.
Well, I mean, they might have just not been able to fit it on the card.
Inexcusable.
So, what makes this game so special? You start out in your opening town, and the plot for this is kind of weak, but it's still there. You're in your kingdom, and the forces of evil rise up, and they're starting to take over parts of the land. But your kingdom's holding out, or the kingdom, the plot kingdom in this is holding out. And this guy wants to take over this kingdom so bad that he kidnaps the king's daughter and basically holds her for ransom. And the king's like, if anyone can bring my daughter back, I'll give you my kingdom. Which, a lot of heroes get interested in and start going out there, and none of them ever come back. But the kingdom's all sealed up. So the main bad guy, which is Balrog, not to be confused with the Lord of the Rings guy, but it's the exact same name. He can't get in because there's seals around the kingdom. So
those guys.
That's right. So you pick one of 4 characters. You have to choose between a fighter, which is your sword and board slash type, low range, high powerful.
It's a Rastan.
Pretty much. You have a priest who fights with a flail and can cast healing and defensive spells. You've got a ninja who is completely a range-based fighter using different throwing stars or throwing knives for his attack. And you have the mage, which is really low physical attack, but gains access to some of the most incredible spells, attack spells.
Yep.
And it does this progression through a experience-based system. Again, this kind of thing has kind of happened in the arcades prior to this, but the level of detail that they go in for this experience system is really mind-boggling. You can actually farm in the beginning of the game, just killing enemies over and over if you want, and raise your level. Another thing that's really amazing about this game, where your game kind of had alternate paths. You could go underground and go through the caves, or stay above ground and kind of go above on the surface. This game actually has branching paths. There's the obvious way that you can go, which makes you do all the side quests and whatnot, or you can actually go against the game and get through certain segments without ever doing the quest. The main one that comes to mind is in the very beginning, you have a mermaid that you can save. And if you save it, she gives you a scale from her tail that allows you to progress through this water. If you don't have it, you can still progress through the water. It just hurts. So if you buy a bunch of medical herbs and stock up on that, you can actually get through the water section without getting her tail and never save her. So it's that kind of detail, it's that kind of allowance in this game that I think makes it special. On top of that, you also have equipment that you can buy, and each fighter has their own equipment that makes sense. The wizard gets upgraded staffs that sometimes they can throw fireballs. Some will help him regenerate mana so he can cast more spells. The fighter gets the most armor out of anyone in the group, and it actually has helmets he could buy, shields, breastplate, leggings, the whole 9 yards. And you don't just go into one shop and buy the best stuff or anything like that. As you go through the game, more shops open up and have a wider selection of inventory. It's so neat. And there are the characters in this game are big enough to feel substantial, and everything you buy has a physical graphic change. So if you're wearing just the helmet for the fighter, it just has his helmet on and then normal clothes for the rest of the armor. That kind of attention to detail is amazing, considering this was an arcade game. This is the kind of stuff that they didn't have to do, but they did. Aaron mentioned the JAMA system a little bit beforehand. This game is also JAMA, and I'm going to blow your mind, Aaron. I bet this is something you didn't know.
All right, blow my mind.
This game, you can play 1 or 2 players. Mm-hmm. You could have both players on the screen at the same time, or you can link 2 cabinets together and play this 4-player.
Wow, I did not know that.
4-player.
That's awesome.
And the way it works is just brilliant. Everyone has to play someone from their own class. Yeah. So you have all 4 characters. Yeah. And you can have all 4 characters on the screen at the same time, but you don't have to. The player 1 and 2 have to stay on the screen with each other because it doesn't do split screen. But player 3 or 4 can go a completely different way and experience the game their own way. And they can buy items for player 1 and 2. So player 1 and 2 could go after the boss or go towards the boss. Player 3 and 4 could take the shortcut through the water and bully through. Buy equipment for players 1 and 2, magically give it to them. Give them health, herbs, that kind of stuff. And then have them fight the boss with upgraded equipment to make it easier, and then catch up with them.
That's awesome. I never knew that.
Amazing, isn't it?
Have you ever seen that anywhere?
I have not seen it. One of the most popular conversions on this is because this never came out as its own cabinet. It's conversion only, which means it took a game.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know that either.
It took someone else's cabinet and stuck their game into it to use. One of the most popular cabinets for this is the Nintendo multi-cab versus cab that has 2 screens. So it's basically a box and it has a screen over here and a screen over here. The screen to the left and the screen to the right.
Yeah.
And that way it still has 2 JAMA boards in it and they're still linked together, but then everyone's right there playing as 4-player.
That is the wackiest thing I have ever heard. We gotta try that, don't we?
You can net play this through emulation.
Really?
Yes.
That's what I was wondering. We got to make that happen. That is good job.
In 1989, 4-player games, there were not many. And of the ones that were out there, they were almost all beat 'em ups, which this is sort of a beat 'em up. I'm not, it's just the gameplay is you attack something, it dies, or you hit it and it take enough hits and it dies. But for 4-player action that is not split screen, but it's not all on one screen, it's kind of a hybrid.
That's how many games did that ever?
Very, very few.
Crazy.
Very, very few.
That is awesome.
So, the gameplay of this, like I said, there are some very small elements of platforming, not nearly as much as in Rastan. The game itself focuses way heavy on the fantasy elements. You've got your gnomes, you've got your dragons, you've got your poisonous spiders, that sort of feel. The bosses in this are awesome. Some are even optional. You could skip past the boss room just by moving through them. The health system is, if you want to refill your health, you can either use magic from the priest, or you can sleep at an inn, or you can use herbs or healing potions. So you get a lot of options there. Each character, between the priest, the ninja, the fighter, and the mage, plays significantly different.
Yeah, that's the truth.
You could really sit down and play this game by yourself 4 times and get a different experience each time, especially if you start taking the unintended alternate paths and avoiding some of the content. It's a really fun time. Game lasts about an hour, I would say.
Yeah, it's long. I've beaten it.
Yep, I have beaten it. Ninja is usually my go-to guy, but I've really started to appreciate the mage.
I've always heard that the priestess was cheaply advantage ridden. Like she was the one to go with.
See, I disagree.
Well, I mean that's the general consensus.
Why her weapon, the flail? It's a flail in the loosest sense of the word. It's like a flail with an extending chain. She swings it, and the flail part goes out, but you can also hit the monsters with the stick part. So if you're close, you get multiple hits as you fight, which is why her biggest weakness is she's weak, but the multiple hits make her do twice as much damage in her weak state. Also, the priest gets a invincibility spell, which is obviously pretty powerful.
Yeah, it is.
The way the game works is you only have 2 buttons. You have a jump and an attack. To use your magic, you hold your attack, and it will scroll through the magic spells, and then you just let go and cast that magic spell.
Do you get the thought that Capcom might have really drawn upon this when it did the Dungeons and Dragons games? Because I mean, they took a lot of the elements from this and put them in that.
Yes, I think they did.
Yeah.
The plot in this, like I said before, it's beat up the bad guy. However, spoilers ahead, it does sort of plot twist at the end, where you defeat the dragon, and the dragon flies off, right? And then you go back to town, and like everybody's been slaughtered. Well, the dragon took over the body of the king during all the craziness that was going on, and was able to get inside the kingdom and was starting to slaughter people. But the heroes came back, so he had to kind of hide, and then he got found out, and then that's when the final battle happens. I really like this game, but I have to go through a few flaws it has too, because it has flaws. Whenever you stand still, it pops up a screen with your experience, your strength, your agility, your AC, your gold, and your herbs, your things you have on your persons. The problem with that is it's a huge box and it takes up about 1/3 of the screen.
Yeah.
Real annoying. The black boxes in this game, real annoying. They should have had
they're sort of necessary.
But they should have had a transparent background.
Well, that may have been a difficult task back in the day.
I don't think so. My second problem with it, especially when we've just looked at Rastan. The music and sound effects of this game are so weak. They're so weak. It's so disappointing.
It is odd. I thought the music was but I mean, it's funny. It's very console RPG-esque in a bad way.
Yes.
Not the good kind of console RPG music. The old stuff that wasn't that good.
Yeah. And there are differences in the regions. The world release of this game, and for those who don't know, typically you have your U.S. release, your Japanese release, and then your world release for arcade games. It's just a way for them to kind of, I guess it's really for distribution.
Yeah.
But
also, you can localize it.
Yeah. The world release is actually easier than the Japanese and American release. They give you
I'm gonna start playing that one.
They give you more money. The prices don't go up as much. To stop you from buying endless amounts of herbs, the price goes up as you go. Mm-hmm. The cost to stay at the end goes up a lot faster. There's a hidden dragon amulet you can get in the game that in the world version it gives you maximum money, but in the U.S. Japan version it only gives you 10,000. Excuse me. That kind of change. Also, the localization for America has the worst translation errors. To the point it's funny.
Yeah. The
very last scene of the game, you got to put in your initials to signify who you are. It gives it some story stuff. So at the end of the game, say your name's Sam. The very last thing the queen says as you're walking off to the sunset is "Hi, Sam," instead of "Bye." So it's like, oh, all the way to the end, they made a little error. Still, I really love this game. What did you think about it?
Well, it's funny when this game first came out in the arcade. I was like, man, look at this. But it was really hard. I thought. When you look at the character classes, you've got your warrior, you've got your wizard, you got your cleric. The ninja, I always thought was a weird. I mean, I actually like it, but I always thought it was a weird.
It is a weird inclusion.
Because that's of course D&D later came out with the Royal Adventures, which basically this is a D&D ripoff.
Yes.
I mean, an unlicensed D&D game. But I like the ninja. I like playing him.
Yeah.
I like this was an unusual game for the time. Most games are a lot like Rastan. You went one way. There was really no choice in the matter. And here you are. This one gives you all kinds of choices. It's weird to start off in a town where you could talk to people.
Yes.
It's very similar to a console RPG. It's very. It reminds me a lot of like the Zelda 2. Or
yes.
Which one is that?
It's
the
Zelda
one?
2. Yeah.
Except not crap. But
I like Zelda 2. But
I do too. It's my favorite of the Zelda series. But there's awesome parts of it. The bad guys are awesome. There's just like slimes that go around. They're made up of like a million little round balls.
Yeah, there are a million little slimes that. Like the boss is one big slime, just the awesome. Little ones put together.
There's like krakens, there's octopus and stuff. There's also a bit where you get shrank. Remember that bit? Yeah.
Yeah, you to interact with the gnome village, you're too big. You can't get inside their huts, so you have to find a flower to make a potion to shrink yourself. And each character has their own shrunken model, and it's dependent on what armor you're wearing. So that is literally like 30 sprites for 20 seconds a game.
Yeah.
It's amazing. That little attention to detail, man, great.
The bad guys in this are really cool. It's a tough game. I mean, it's not easy. I think it's every bit as hard as Rastan, if not harder. I think it's really hard.
I think it starts out a lot fairer. There's hardly any pits in this that are instant death.
Always a good thing.
Yes. It also has ways to progress that, unlike Rastan, if you get stuck, you're stuck. This, you can buy enough herbs to kind of get through something with enough healing.
Yeah.
So it has some ways to do that. Even if later in the game the herbs will be too expensive for you to really benefit, you can still get farther if you needed to. And plus, of course, you can always money through. Unlike Rastan, where there are segments where it's just like, no. If you can't get past this sequence of jumps, it doesn't matter how many quarters you have, you can't get through.
Yeah. This, I will say, Cadash is the original quarter sucker. I mean,
it's
this
up
thing
there.
will drain you down.
Yeah.
Having just found out that it was a 4-player option, I just think that's the best.
Yeah.
I just think it's awesome. I've got to give that a shot. But I always like Cadash. It's the answer to the question, what happens if we take a RPG from a console and give it put it in an arcade machine with all the enhanced graphics, and this is what you get. This awesome, beautiful game that has a lot of nice flourishes, like you said, a lot of attention to detail. And it gives you that immersive feel. It does. That you're on a quest.
It really does. If it wasn't for the broken English, the very in some places unacceptably bad English, I could sit down and you could make a campaign out of this.
If you think about it, starting with a Rastan, moving up to this, and then moving on to the Capcom D&D games, you could see
perfect
the transition.
Progression. Yeah.
Right up the scale.
Yes.
In fact, I told Brent, because when he picked this, I always think to myself, "Oh, this is a Capcom game." Well, it's not, but I mean, it's very Capcom-y, I think. But it's the perfect central hub to those two. I think. I like it.
Yes. For prices on this game, holy moly, there's a lot of reason why there's not 2-player cabinets out there.
Oh, yeah?
The board alone, I'm talking just the PCB. The cheapest I could find it was $450, dude.
It was a popular game.
In
America.
It did not sell well.
Well, I mean, it's well thought of.
It is well thought of, but it did not sell well for the time. Same thing with yours. The marquees and the bezels in this thing go from anywhere from $15 to $60. But like I said, the board itself, holy moly. Some people are getting as much as $600 for the thing.
Wow.
So
why don't we sell off our arcade boards, Brent?
Because we made tons of money when we did it.
Oh, yeah, good point. You know what makes us zero money, but it's always a good time?
What's that?
Spinning the wheel. Oh, yeah.
All right.
Just singing along. Here we go.
Oh, man.
Oh, man. Look at this.
Good old flail, Betty.
All right. Brent, tell the people what we added this week.
Which one did you add?
Handheld electronics.
Oh, yes. And this is not Game & Watch games, but a lot of the rip-off versions of those.
Like your Tommies, your handheld footballs, baseballs. Right. In fact, when we did our Amigos Secret Santa exchange, I sent out a Double Dragon 2 to my Secret Santa handheld. So there you go. All right, give her a good spin.
You know what? I'm really hoping for some MMO. I've really got a feeling for it.
All right. Oh man.
Good spin. Good spin.
Look at it go. What do we got there, Brandy? I can't see. Let me see here. Oh, now this is tremendous. So this is great news, everyone. As you know, on the Amigo show, we cover the Amiga. However, we got to get some of that on this show too. We're covering games exclusive to the Amiga CD32. It's double Amiga action next week for this and the Amigos. Now, Britt, I own a CD32.
You sure do.
What do you think about the CD32?
You sure do.
What do you think about the CD32?
You sure do.
You got nothing to say about this thing?
Man, this is a crap console in my opinion. If you're gonna play Amiga stuff, just play Amiga stuff. I don't like the idea of having a console version of a computer when the computer is superior.
Did you say it was a crap version of the console? Did you say it was crap? You said the CD32 was crap?
Yeah, I don't like it.
And that's it.
Oh, are we doing this?
I've had enough of this.
All right, you know what? Let's do it then. All right.
You're going down.
Yeah.
No one calls me crap, and no one calls my
baby.
console crap. He won't be here next week, folks, but I will. Until then, bye-bye, Brent.
Yeah, no!